Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our event on transforming blue food systems for equity, resilience, and climate action. My name is Michelle Tichler. I'm a senior scientist at WorldFish, and I lead on climate and environment there. It's my pleasure to welcome you here this morning. My first day in the venue, so still fresh and excited. This event is a happy merger between a couple of different applications. So I'm going to have to look at my speaker notes to list all our partner organizations, but they are the Aquatic Life Institute, the Aquatic Blue Food Coalition, the Brazil Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture, Coastal 500, EBCD, EDF, Embrapa, FAO, FOLU, IAD, WARE, Stanford University, WorldFish, and WRI. And today's event is about blue foods, and blue or aquatic foods are all the foods that are caught or captured caught or farmed in freshwater, marine, or brackish ecosystems. So basically fisheries and aquaculture. And these systems are incredibly important. They deliver on nutrition for billions of people around the world. A big study last year showed that 490 million people's livelihoods depend on small-scale fisheries alone. They're the most traded product by value, so also incredibly important for economies. And many blue foods can be produced with a relatively low carbon footprint, but there's also significant sustainability challenges that need to be addressed. And then finally, especially here at COP, it's really important to acknowledge that fisheries in particular are really vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, but there is a adaptation financing gap of about 95% here. So all the partners that I've just listed have been working really hard over the last couple of years to get fisheries and aquaculture higher on the agenda here within UNFCCC, as well as national climate strategies. I think we're slowly getting there. I'm really excited this year that due to the leadership of the COP30 presidency, for the first time ever, fisheries and aquaculture have a place in the official presidency agenda. And with this agenda being adopted by the high-level champions, I'm also excited to see this moving forward in the next 5 years. And we're also starting to see more meaningful inclusion of fisheries and aquaculture into NDCs. So now is the next question of how are we going to be implementing these ambitions, taking note of all of the different potential trade-offs that might occur when doing so. So for today's event, we'll be hearing from a variety of speakers who are addressing the resilience and sustainable development outcomes of aquatic food systems from different perspectives. So we have people talking from national government, city government, research, animal welfare advocacy, as well as regional governance. And each of our panelists will be giving a short presentation, and then hopefully there will be some time for Q&A at the end. So as a first speaker, it's really my pleasure to introduce Catarina Cardoso da Melo. She's with the Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture here in Brazil, where she's the general coordinator for fisheries research. Her background is in fisheries engineering and fisheries management, and we're really happy to hear from her about what she's working on at MPA. And hold it really close to your mouth. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. As I've been already introduced, I'm Catarina Melo, General Coordinator for Research at the Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture of the Brazilian government. And today, I know that the theme here is Blue Food Systems, Equity, Resilience, and Climate Action. But before we talk about food, we need to talk about people, right? And as we talk about people, we need to talk about the activity that sustains a lot of them. So I'm talking about fisheries, basically. As we know that the fishing activity, I'm talking here about the whole Amazon, it supports the livelihoods of 47 million people, including the 9 countries that compose the Amazon. And that includes 1.5 million indigenous people, particularly for Brazil. The region that is most relies more in fisheries is the North region of Brazil that we are here right now. So the fishery is not only economic activity, but it's also part of the culture, way of life, and a great way to food security for the community. And we figured that the monitoring and reliable data are essential to manage fisheries sustainably ensuring the conservancy of resources, continuity of the activity of these fisher folks. So before we get to this slide, I would like to share some context on fisheries data in Brazil. So we have more than 20 years of gap data, of consolidated data for fisheries, and that's what we tried to do for the last 3 years in this government was consolidate data and collect more data and consolidate them, because without that, we cannot manage, we cannot know what people are doing, what people are producing. So we did that, and we have some outcomes of this great work, because, you know, Brazilian is huge. It's a huge dimension, and the work's not easy, but we try with the beginning of it, with the beginning of getting data and using the data for management of fisheries and people that lives, fisher folks actually. So we have 3 bulletins that we published this year. The first one is bulletin for register fisher folks, where they are located, where they fish, and the production, and some economic and socioeconomic information as well. The other is for bulletin for aquaculture inside of Brazil. And the other one is the last one is compile bulletin for fisheries and aquaculture. And we did this for 2023 and 2024. Also, we have a lot of dashboards that show some information about production, fisher folk, trade, the situation of stocks. It's a lot of information that we've been doing for the last 3 years. But with all this work, we figured that still there was a gap in inland fisheries. So we couldn't get much information because the Amazon is huge and all the basins that we have here is huge. So we figured, and we had the partnership with Professor Victoria, wave for us, and she did this great work for rebuilding land fishery statistics. It's a project called Integra Pesca, and the main goal was to collect, organize data in inland fisheries in the Amazon and create an unified and accessible database for researchers and public institutions. With that information, we'll be able to manage the fisheries, to know more about production, fisher folks, and so on, and how they live, culture, and so on. So I'm heading to the end of my speech here. And what we figured out also is in all this process of getting data is that people need to lead the collection and management, the collection of data and management. They need to participate in the decision making, because it's their livelihood, it's their culture, it's their food actually. So they need to be part of the process. So some of the things that make people key to collect data and so on is that the fishers are guardians of stocks and ecosystems. They have an active participation. They have to have a active participation in monitoring statistics, because they know more about fisheries than we do, and it's part of their lives. And also, sustainable management ensures the fishers' livelihoods and their future. And also, with their knowledge, we can know more about the ways to adapt to climate change, the fisheries, the activity, and the production of fisheries. So the fishery is not only about numbers, it's about people, as I said before. And for us, the human dimension of fishery is the most important. It's key for everything. So fishing is a way of life, identity, and culture. It's a traditional knowledge associated with scientific knowledge is foundation for sustainable management. And also women and family are key actors in the fishery chains and the social inclusion strengths, conservation, and food security. And that's it. I give my email here if you have any questions later. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Katarina, and thank you for highlighting the how core people are to the center of blue food systems, and also the connection between people and data and management of those fisheries systems. Next up, it's my pleasure to introduce Sofika Kostyniuk, who's actually going to be talking about the animal dimension of blue food systems. So Sofika is the managing director at the Aquatic Life Institute. She spent the last 20 years working on ocean conservation and sustainable seafood initiatives, as well as bringing this dimension of animal welfare to different high-level political fora. So, floor is yours.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone.
Very close.
Thank you so much, Michelle, to World Fish and the FAO for hosting this important conversation. I'm very honored to be able to represent the animals today. So at Aquatic Life Institute, we spend all of our advocacy, time, and energy on speaking up for this invisible majority. These animals that are in the food and climate debate are aquatic animals, and they are largely neglected from sustainability frameworks and from the decision-making processes to date that impact every single year over 130 billion farmed fishes, 630 billion farmed shrimps, and over 2 trillion, that's trillion with a capital T, wild aquatic animals. These are caught and killed for human consumption. These numbers are so large that it's difficult to wrap our mind around those numbers, but they represent around 20 times the number of all land-based animals combined that are produced and killed every single year. Even with these large numbers, as I mentioned, these animals are absent from sustainability frameworks, and that's why Aquatic Life Institute was founded, to create a bridge, to create partnerships between policymakers, between academia, industry, and advocacy to ensure that sustainability conversations and decisions include these important stakeholders. Oops. Sorry. There we go. So we measure progress, not in silos, but we actually measure it through systems change. And we do this in 3 phases. We call it recognition, protection, and prioritization. Recognition is all about bringing visibility to animal welfare in policy and in science debates. Once that visibility is created, we turn talk into action, into tools and concrete safeguards for the aquatic animals. And then last but not least, prioritization. This is our ultimate goal, where we want animal welfare driving decision-making processes. We need it embedded, as I mentioned, in the frameworks so that we have a holistic and compassionate and well-informed food system. And that way, the literally trillions of animals that I mentioned before will become part of the solution, not create these compounding problems because we have blind spots in our decision making. I wanted to quickly run you through some case studies so you can understand how this actually works in the real world, talking about those pillars of recognition, protection, and prioritization. So first, recognition. Aquatic Life Institute published a landmark study this past year in MDPI Journal of Sciences on harmonizing health and welfare in modern day aquaculture. This is a novel concept where we're not only considering the animals in the system and helping them survive so we can grow them out to market size and sell them, but actually reduce their suffering in the system and ensure that they live lives of enrichment. This is really important, of course, for the animals themselves, but also for the producers. we have seen that when this approach is taken, that waste is reduced in the system. The use of antibiotics and pesticides is reduced in the systems. Emissions are reduced in the system, and disease resilience is increased. So it really is a win-win-win for everyone, humans and non-human animals. When we move to the second pillar, protection, this is where we again turn talk into tools. We've been working very closely for the past 5 years with one of the largest seafood certification schemes in the world, Aquaculture Stewardship Council. You may be familiar with them. Their label appears on many, many products, seafood products in your grocery stores and beyond. Oops. Their certification scheme covers over 45 billion animals every single year. And this spring, they rolled out their new farm standard, which established welfare as a sustainability pillar rather than just an ethical add-on. This was a significant advancement. Work very closely with retailers, like leading retailers in the UK, including Co-op, that rolled out protections for farmed shrimps, where they no longer will approve a horrible practice called eye stalk ablation, where the eye stalk is actually cut off of female shrimps to make them more reproductively fecund. It's incredibly cruel and has actually been shown to produce weaker progeny. So there are all these negative ripple effects. So we've worked with Co-op to roll out that policy, and similarly with a global seafood supplier, Hilton Foods. In our wild capture fisheries work, we have also demonstrated that incorporating welfare very thoughtfully reduces waste in the system and actually produces a higher quality of flesh for the fish, which means longer shelf life, which means better tasting and better quality fish. So we're linking now welfare to sustainability and profit. Prioritization, our ultimate goal. This is where we want the welfare to guide decisions in the food chain, not simply inform conversations, but guide decision making. So we've been working with the Global Dialogue on seafood traceability for the last few years. We have actually been leading their extension framework on welfare for the first time, both for fisheries as well as aquaculture. This approach ties data, specific key data elements, with the seafood product from the vessel in wild capture or from the farm when we're farming aquatic animals, all the way through the value chain, through to the end consumer, to the plate, making the data traceable, reportable, comparable, which is perfectly aligned with what corporations require for their ESG, environmental, social, governance requirements. So it lifts all of that work up. Again, this is the ultimate place where we want to get to, where welfare is a driving decision-making factor. So certainly we cannot say that we have a holistic blue food system if we continue ignoring some of the most important stakeholders in the system itself, which are, for us, are the sentient aquatic animals in the system. Welfare speaks to SDG 14, life underwater, of course, but it also speaks very clearly and very closely to other important SDGs, poverty, responsible consumption and production, as well as climate action. So we have the tools in place, we have some policies in place, and we have the guidance in place. What needs to happen now is we need to integrate welfare into all of these leading frameworks and discussions in order to get to a place where we can create a not only productive and resilient blue food system, but one that is absolutely embedded in ethical practices, compassionate and just practices. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sofika, for your excellent presentation, really pushing the boundaries of how we think about sustainability and on outlining some practical pathways for integrating that better into regulatory and governance regimes. So next up, it's my pleasure to introduce Laura Anderson, who will be bringing a researcher perspective here. She's representing the Stanford Center for Ocean Solutions, where until last month, she was the engagement project manager focused on blue food research and policy communication. She has supported initiatives such as the Blue Food Assessment, the Aquatic Blue Food Coalition, and the UN Ocean Decade Blue Food Futures Program. And today we'll be talking about work on integrating blue foods into national climate strategies. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks so much, Michelle. And thank you for WorldFish for hosting this and the Food and Ag Pavilion for being a space to talk about some of these food systems issues. As Michelle mentioned, my name is Laura Anderson. I recently started working for Ocean Visions, but I'll be presenting work today that was done as part of the Stanford Center for Ocean Solutions. And the Center for Ocean Solutions has been working with several partners over the last few years to think about this intersection of blue foods and climate strategies. How can countries think about blue foods connecting to their climate priorities, and what resources and tools might they need to think more strategically about the opportunities that there may be. So as Michelle mentioned towards the beginning of this side event, climate change is impacting blue food production around the world. This is a figure from a paper from the Blue Food Assessment in 2021 that looked at climate hazards to fisheries and aquaculture systems. And as you can see, by mid-century, predicted to be high emissions, high climate hazards in several regions of the world, particularly tropical Africa, Central America, and Southeast Asia. And these are areas that are also very highly reliant on blue food systems for nutrition, for food security, for livelihoods, which really emphasizes the threat that climate change plays to blue food systems, the benefit of blue food systems in many regions of the world. We also know that blue foods can be part of food system solutions. There are many blue foods that are lower emission than land-based terrestrial animal source foods. And we also see that the diversity of blue foods really is an opportunity to think about lower emission systems. So there are over 2,500 different species or species groups of blue foods. They offer different, they operate in different production systems. They have different climate impacts. And so as countries are thinking about what foods might be more climate resilient in the future or allow for reducing of greenhouse gas emissions within food systems, options like small pelagics like sardines or farmed bivalves like oysters may be part of solutions as lower emission foods. With this context in mind, the Stanford Center for Ocean Solutions and WorldFish have been taking a look at NDC 2.0 submissions for the presence of blue food related keywords. So keywords like fisheries or seafood that would be in these submissions. This is ongoing work, but as you can see from some initial plots, there's quite a lot of variation in countries that are including blue foods in their NDCs. And important to note too, just because a country might not have included blue food keywords in their NDCs doesn't mean they're not thinking about climate resilient fisheries management or thinking about these issues in a climate context, but rather it emphasizes that there may not be a presence of these systems in climate planning overall and an opportunity to think about how this connects to other sectors that are part of broader climate planning. So in order to support some of those efforts, last year, the Center for Ocean Solutions worked with several partners to put together a report on opportunities for integrating blue foods into national climate strategies. And the idea behind this was to compile different pathways, opportunities for thinking about these issues in the climate space. So this report was organized into 5 intervention areas, focusing not only on production of caps or fisheries and aquaculture, but also other aspects of blue food systems that may be relevant within climate planning. So for instance, supply chains and how to reduce seafood loss and waste as a way to reduce emissions overall, or thinking about consumption and diets and how that can be brought into climate planning. And for each of these intervention areas, we offer potential policy options, case study examples from countries around the world of how countries are thinking about climate in their food systems planning, and analyze some of the co-benefits and trade-offs of policy options related to blue foods and climate. This year, we've been taking those broader guidelines that took sort of a global compiled view and tailoring them to more country contexts. So focusing on Ghana, Indonesia, Mexico, and Vietnam, realizing that, as was mentioned by our colleagues at MPA, context really matters and place really matters when it comes to what policy options might be true opportunities. So we've been working on case studies that were released last week that compile production data, consumption data, trade data, greenhouse gas emissions and climate risk data from these 4 countries, and offer some targeted policy recommendations that pull from the guidelines but are more focused on country contexts. Now, this research work can provide us some scientific and policy foundation to consider some of these issues, but a lot of the action depends on collective action and cooperation. And that's where the focus of the work of the Aquatic Blue Food Coalition has been since it launched in 2021 at the UN Food Systems Summit. And the focus of the coalition has been to raise the profile of aquatic foods in national, regional, and international dialogues, including UNFCCC, as well as mobilize support for countries who are considering how blue foods could play a role in their food system policy as well as climate policy. And so these research tools and resources have been used by the coalition in working with countries who are thinking about blue foods in their climate planning. And so the goal is that this research and the coalition's work can really help countries have more tools, resources, and partnerships to consider how blue food systems might fit within their climate priorities. So I'll end there. I'm happy to speak more afterwards about the research and about the coalition. And I've the QR code on your screen will take you to some of the research resources so you can take a closer look. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Laura, for walking us through all the different dimensions of the research that Stanford COS has been leading on with partners. Next up, it's my great honor to introduce Mayor Hamilton Brito. He's the mayor of Coruja in Para here in Brazil. He's a member of the Coastal 500 Network and is leading initiatives to protect and restore the region's unique coastal and mangrove ecosystems. Coruja is nestled in the heart of the Brazilian Amazon forest, and it's part of the world's largest continuous mangrove belt, so therefore critical for fishing, agriculture, and other nature-based activities. And so thank you so much for honoring us with your presence here. And he'll be receiving a parallel translation.
Bom dia a todos. Meu nome é Hamilton Brito, sou prefeito do município aqui próximo, Curuçá, um município da costa amazônica, e aqui é uma honra poder falar em nome das comunidades costeiras aqui do estado, representando esse belo município que é Curuçá.
Good morning to everyone. This is Mayor Hamilton Brito. He's a mayor in Curuçá, in Pará, near Belém, and it's an honor to be here today speaking about the coastal communities.
E eu gostaria de, inicialmente, agradecer aqui nessa participação e poder falar um pouco de exemplos que nós estamos fazendo em Curuçá, que é a união entre a prefeitura, o ICMBio, as comunidades, as organizações sociais, como a Rari Brasil, que tem impulsionado os prefeitos a participar desses debates.
And it's an honor to speak here today on the participation and the initiatives we have in our municipality, which are in union with the local government, partnerships and communities, and also with NGOs, such as RARE, and also ICMBio.
E hoje a gente vê a importância de nós que vivemos do oceano, de saber que o oceano está no centro das discussões, principalmente dessa discussão climática, e que hoje a COP aqui no Brasil, aqui no Pará, aqui na Amazônia, é uma oportunidade muito grande para que a gente possa ecoar nossas vozes e falar um pouco desse bioma tão importante que são os oceanos, os manguezais da nossa região.
Nowadays, we see the importance of the oceans, and it is vital to speak on them, and the importance that COP30 here in the Amazon to speak on the oceans and on the mangroves.
Queria também falar a todos vocês aqui de um projeto exitoso que nós temos no nosso município, a qual tem também atraído muitas pessoas de diversos países, que é a Aquavila, um projeto que cultiva ostra sem agredir o ambiente e que tem garantido também a qualidade do alimento vindo da extração e sem prejudicar o meio ambiente, e que tem garantido a segurança alimentar de diversas famílias no nosso município.
I would like to speak about a successful project we have in Curaçá, which is called Aquavila. It's a project that is a sustainable project. It doesn't harm the environment, and it's to harvest oysters in a sustainable way, also making the community resilient, and they have access to food, and there's food security to the communities.
Queria falar também da importância das universidades, da ciência, da tecnologia, mas poder também falar do monitoramento. Hoje nós temos exemplo também de monitoramento do meio ambiente, das águas, através do projeto Lapimar, que monitora o nível do crescimento das marés, do aquecimento, mas que também, em tempo real, através da inteligência artificial, está podendo nos ajudar a fazer com que a gente possa ter essa garantia do sustento, ter essa garantia das famílias ali na nossa comunidade, poder trabalhar esses projetos que realmente eles vêm dando certo aqui na costa amazônica e que são exemplos que precisam do fortalecimento e da parceria dos órgãos internacionais, do governo federal e de todos aqueles que possam nos ajudar.
Through Aquavila, we also have important partnership with the universities, such as UFPA, which is the Federal University of Pará. We have monitoring in the communities through artificial intelligence, which can monitor the tides, and it is very important to the community.
Nós fazemos parte de uma área de reservas, estamos dentro da reserva extrativista Mãe Grande, que é uma grande parceira, que tem a gestão do ICMBio e que tem nos ajudado a trabalhar a preservação, a garantir com que esse tão importante universo que vem da economia azul, ele possa garantir para as futuras gerações o sustento, que ele possa garantir a preservação, que ele possa estar presente na vida de todos aqueles que precisam, de todas as gerações, de todos nós que precisamos diminuir, fazer com que o clima ele possa cada vez mais melhorar em função de nós, humanos.
Aquavila is located within the extractivist reserve called Mãe Grande, and it is very important to have a partnership with ICMBio, which monitors the extractivist reserve. And it is vital to have partnerships with different sectors so the community can be resilient and can continue to produce food for a lot of generations.
Se eu pudesse fazer um pedido às comunidades internacionais, a todos aqueles que possam ajudar os municípios costeiros, o pedido seria o seguinte: que os financiamentos eles possam chegar aonde as coisas acontecem, nos territórios, nas comunidades, nos municípios, porque é lá que nós vivemos, é lá que as pessoas estão, é lá que elas precisam de alimento e é lá que elas precisam do financiamento para que elas possam investir em projetos que vêm dando certo e que fazem com que a garantia da segurança alimentar ela possa prevalecer para todas as pessoas.
If I could make one request to the international communities that care about the ocean is to have finance so that the finance can go where the communities, where the change are really happening. In that way, we can continue on making successful projects that can go on for a long time.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mayor Brito, for really grounding our discussion here on sustainable and resilient blue food systems in the mangrove forests of the Amazon coast. And next, we're going to go to a different part of the world. It's my pleasure to introduce Silvano Namadoa. And he's a last-minute replacement on this panel. A lot had to change and happen for him to be able to be here. But Namadoa is currently serving as the president of Earfish and also the secretary general of the AfriFishNet. He hails from a fisher community, and he's an accomplished small-scale fisheries campaigner in Africa, trying to amplify the voice of fisher and coastal communities in representation and decision-making processes. So thank you so much for being here, and looking forward to hearing your perspective.
Thank you so much, moderator, and thank you so much, my colleagues, for giving me time to be able to deliberate with you on issues with regard to climate change, and especially touching on the fisher and coastal communities. Well, good, thank you. As my colleague mentioned, I'm representing the AfriFishNet together with the Earfish. These are platforms of the small-scale fisheries in Africa. And we normally engage various players on issues that directly or indirectly impact our livelihoods. Because as communities, we feel that being the frontliners in matters climate change, we must have a say in decision making, but also in the representation, so that by the end of the day, we feel we are part and parcel of each and every process that directly touches on our livelihoods, and especially the resource that we normally use. From where I come from, the communities have actively been engaging in a number of activities and processes to ensure that their voices and their concerns and their welfare is taken care of when it comes to issues of the climate change. For instance, within Kenya, we've had a community that has faced a lot of challenges when it comes to perennial flooding since early 1960s. And despite what they've been going through, they've been making sure that they also live with these particular scenarios so that they own and identify themselves as part and parcel of where they live. And unfortunately, some of them have lost over about 20 to 30 or so villages. Why? Because of the perennial floods that come after every maybe 2 to 3 years. Initially, people used to think that it's just normal flooding. But when this discussion around climate change started, is when they say, so this is what we've been facing. Our grandfathers and our forefathers have been going through. It is climate change. Then how do we also be part and parcel of the discussion to be able to address this particular negative impacts that by the end of the day has been able to robust some of the villages? Because some of the villages, as I mentioned, they're non-existent. People just mentioned to you that there's a village that used to be there called so and so and so and so, but where are the people that have been forced to move? And as they move, it also affects their daily activities, because predominantly they are fishers. And it's very difficult for a fisher person to be moved from his traditional way of living, which is fishing, to go and start cultivating crop. Like where I come from, it's very difficult. In fact, I've started going to the shamba, the garden, to till the land so that we can be able to maybe harvest some crops. That's something that I didn't used to do. My only trade each and every day was get my net and my oar and get in the canoe and go fishing. And then maybe by 2, 3 o'clock, I'm back with the fish. But now these days, when I go there with that net, there's nothing. So that one shows you that the resilience of the fisher for communities when it comes to matters that especially touch on adaptation strategies is very, very, very key. But also as a community or rather as a constituency, the fisher folk normally engages the government in various processes that, especially when they're trying to come up with developing climate change relevant initiatives. They also want to be part and parcel of this discussion. They also want to make sure that the decisions that are being made, they are part and parcel of this decision making, not only for this generation, but also for their future generation, the same way their forefathers used to do. But one thing that we also been working as EAFish and AfriFishNet is to mobilize their voice in other levels of decision making. For instance, we have the regional economic bodies in Africa who engage directly with the African Union in ensuring that we have these continental strategies put in place that inform and influence the country processes by the end of the day. There is I think my colleague, when she was making her presentation, she mentioned the importance of the communities in being involved in national NDCs and also the national adaptation plans development. So it's good to ensure that we push this so that by the end of the day, we also part and a parcel of the whole thing. Currently, EAFish and AfriFishNet, we are involved in assessing the level of benefit by the fisher communities in various funding mechanisms within the UNFCCC arrangement. And we intend to come up with a report on this so that it can help us in our advocacy maneuvers, both at the national level, regional level, but also at the continental level, so that we feel that we are part and parcel of the climate change discourse on our continent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing some of your experiences on how climate change has been impacting communities in Kenya and what you're trying to do to ensure a seat at the table for small-scale fishing communities. Can I now ask all of our panelists to come up to the stage, please? You've all been exceptionally good at keeping within time, so we actually have some time for questions. Is there maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience? Yes. Can I borrow this?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for a great panel. I'm Anna Dukra. I'm a researcher at IIED, which is the International Institute for Environment and Development. And it was mentioned in a few of the presentations, this question around like recognition of blue food systems, not only in coastal communities, but how we bring that conversation into mainstream food policy or into mainstream climate action. So I was wondering if you could speak to some examples where you kind of found innovative ways to break down the silos in these policy conversations, but also in the conversations around action with regards to this topic. Great, maybe we take.
Yes, my name is Freeman Elo. I'm from Nigeria. So I'm also from a coastal community. So I just want to push the question because most of the conversation talked about climate risk in our coastal environment and how it have impact negatively on fisher folks. But the conversation need to point more closely to policies because there are a lot of policy fragmentation or inclusion. Most times local people react like my brother, you know, when policies are already being taken and processes already in place. So I don't know if during the panel session it's possible to let us know how some of your interventions and actions are being responsive, inclusive from the beginning to ensure that they are protected from the beginning, you know. Thank you.
Okay, so if I may summarize the questions, there is a question about successful examples of how you're breaking down silos to bring aquatic foods into different policy spaces, and then a question about how we make those policies responsive to the needs of communities. Who would like to take that first?
Well, I'll take the second one. In Brazil, we try to make sure that the community participate in the decision making. And one of the strategies that we use is that we have several fora that they participate and they make pleads and participate in the decision making. In Brazil today, we are trying to get a lot of data to manage better the fisheries. But one thing that we're missing right now is data about how climate change affects fisheries and aquaculture. We do not have enough data to make policies, not right now. So we need to generate data and then try to create some solutions for this. But we are hearing the community and they participate in a lot of fora to decision making about fisheries and aquaculture. I guess I answered.
Thank you so much. Yes, for governments to have responsive policies in place, one thing that we've been able to observe as both IEFish and AfriFishNet is that the community needs to organize itself. And again, you need to wrestle for the space. Most governments, because of the competing interests in various processes, if the community does not become proactive and having organized themselves, then this space is not going to be given on a silver platter or silver platter. You have to wrestle, and that's what we've been doing. So we must have that voice, because one thing again we have also been able to discover is that governments fear masses. So if the communities can be able to speak and as one and be able to push issues that are of interest to their daily lives, then I want to assure you that we are going to make. We've done that with our regional economic bodies from where we come in Africa. We've done that with the African Union and even FAO, whom we've been working with very closely on ensuring that each and every aspect of this small-scale fisheries guideline is also embraced in various fisheries-related strategies and interventions within our bidding. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the questions. At Aquatic Life Institute, we focus our policy advocacy not on small scale fisheries and aquaculture. They tend to be largely of higher welfare. They're very targeted. There's far less waste in the system. So we focus on industrial scale, commercial aquaculture and industrial operations. They have the ability to scale up and tend to be better resourced as well to create these significant changes that do need to happen. Where we have seen success in opening up global policy conversations on industrial scale aquaculture is to actually introduce and redefine what global agriculture means. And anytime there's a reference to agriculture, to also begin incorporating aquaculture, especially as the global food agenda begins to push more and more for the blue food system space to advance. That is where we see an opening in policy conversations. But I do want to present a significant word of caution around a one-size-fits-all blue foods agenda. That is not sustainable. We need to be very thoughtful about which blue foods productions we pursue. We need to be focusing on lower trophic level species, on vegetarian species, so we don't have negative ripple effects on the hidden hidden impacts of these systems through fish meal, fish oil, wild capture fisheries. We need to be thinking about aquatic plants, aquatic algae production, and so on. So blue foods are certainly part of the global food system solution moving forward, but it needs to be very thoughtful and intentional.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. And I'll speak a bit to both of them. I mean, I think to your point, I mean, small scale actors are critical to blue food solutions. And so one research effort that I would point you to that's been doing really interesting work, sort of focusing on some of the data gaps that exist around small scale actors that sometimes lead to being left out of policy consideration, is the Illuminating Hidden Harvests initiative. So this was an initiative that's been being led by FAO, World Fish, and Duke University, that's focusing on the role of small scale actors in blue food systems and focusing on data there. So that's, I think, an effort that's trying to bring some insights from small-scale actors into global policy discussions around food systems. And I would say, too, I think there's been a much bigger presence of food at COPs in the last few years, and I think that's been promising. I think there's room to grow, but that's been really promising. And I feel like something that has stood out to me over the past couple of years within the blue food conversation is there's been more coordination of folks who are focused on aquatic food systems in discussions with food systems organizations that are focusing on terrestrial food systems and thinking about how can we advocate together? How can we be more coordinated around some pieces of the landscape, like the Sharm el-Sheikh joint work on agriculture, focusing on, if there are discussions about agriculture, they should be also considering aquatic foods. So I think that that's been a big step, at least within the aquatic food policy space, is sort of instead of working in a silo within the food systems actors, to be working together with those actors and advocating for more holistic approaches to food systems in the face of climate change.
Eu vejo a importância das comunidades, porque são elas que estão de frente com os problemas. E elas nos ajudam, enquanto gestor do município, a nos orientar sobre os problemas, mas também, ao mesmo tempo, buscar soluções unidas para que a gente possa minimizar os problemas. E é através dessa participação integrada com as comunidades, com os pescadores, com os agricultores, com aqueles que realmente estão vivendo ali no território, que a gente pode fazer uma gestão mais eficiente. Mas é importante que a gente tenha as pesquisas, as universidades, os institutos, que eles nos deem também esses dados, que eles possam ser reais para a gente aplicar eles na prática. E aí eu falei de alguns exemplos de políticas públicas que também já saíram do papel lá no nosso município, em Curuçá, da nossa região amazônica, aqui costeira, e falei também de instrumentos que são importantes para que a gente possa fazer esse monitoramento. E lá em Curuçá nós já aprovamos o gerenciamento costeiro de toda a nossa região territorial lá do mar, do manguezal, que é a ferramenta que realmente ela nos norteia a saber qual é a espécie que está tendo menos espécie naquele momento, está se produzindo menos, e monitorar também a questão das pescas predatórias. E no próximo ano, se Deus quiser, nós já vamos também estar construindo o nosso plano ambiental, junto com a associação, junto com a RARI Brasil, junto com a Associação Brasileira do Município, que é um outro instrumento que vai fazer com que a gente possa prevenir quanto às ações climáticas, melhorar o sistema. E eu falei também do exemplo que está dando muito certo quando a gente aplica na prática essa integração entre a gestão pública, as comunidades, os órgãos, que foi sobre a Aquavila, o projeto de criação de ostra, que está dando muito certo, que já tem lá mais de 20 anos, mas que agora, com todo esse olhar para o meio ambiente, com todo esse olhar para o clima, com todo esse olhar para a população dos territórios, ele é um projeto que ele pode ser modelo para o mundo, porque lá as pessoas vivem desse sistema, são famílias que vivem desse sistema e que não agride o meio ambiente. Eles estão cultivando, eles estão cuidando, eles estão protegendo e não estão agredindo o meio ambiente. Então, são exemplos que estão dando certo, que não ficou só no papel, mas que já está na prática dessa integração entre essa parceria multinível, que ela é fundamental para que a gente possa realmente alcançar objetivos com sustentabilidade e preservação.
I see the importance of local communities because they are on the front line of the problems. As a mayor, it helps me to understand better what they are facing and how to better help them to overcome these problems. In Curaçá, we already have a coastal management plan, which is vital to manage our coast side. And by next year, we hope to have a climate policy plan. In that way, we can also achieve solutions for the climate crisis. Also in Curaçao, we already have a successful project called Aquavila, and it is already an answer to local communities and also on multi-level partnerships with local communities, local governments, NGOs, and it shows that we can build a sustainable future, also achieving food security to the communities. Thank you.
Great. I think we're almost at time. So in 10 words or fewer, one action that you would like leaders here at COP30 to take for bringing aquatic foods into climate action?
Such pressure. Maybe financing for generating data and to come up with better solutions for blue food systems and in the context of climate change. Sorry.
Yes, the financing must take cognizance of the community's importance in climate change discussion. And more so, from where I come or where I sit, small-scale fisheries must be part and parcel of this discussion because they provide a lot when it comes to food security, nutrition, and incomes, and especially for vulnerable segments of the communities who are women and the youth. Thank you.
Animal welfare is a key part of the solution of any policy that is being developed moving forward to reduce emissions, to reduce waste, to reduce pesticide use. Invest in small-scale fisheries, invest in innovation. Blue foods can certainly be part of the solution and must be moving forwards, but thoughtful planning, thoughtful execution is critical.
I would say food systems are a critical part to climate planning, and blue foods are a critical part to global food systems.
poder olhar a natureza no contexto geral, do ambiente, da preservação, mas também que aqueles que têm o poder de olhar para os territórios, porque é lá que tudo acontece, é lá que estão os problemas e as soluções. Então, que os que têm a condição de poder fazer com que tudo isso se transforme em melhoria, que eles possam fazer esse papel de investir nos territórios, investir financeiramente, que lá, com certeza, a população que já faz esse cuidado todos os dias vão, com condições, vão poder fazer ainda melhor.
To look upon the nature in a holistic way, and also to look on the local territories, because that's where everything happens, the issues and the solutions. And for the leaders to finance these communities because they have the solutions. Thank you.
All right, and with that, I would really like to thank our panelists. I hope that the key takeaway here is that Blue Foods link nutrition, livelihood, sustainable management, and climate action. And also, I hope that this event really demonstrated the power of making broad coalitions for moving action forward. So thank you very much.